best things in life for free, but you can give them to the birds and bees. I want money. That's what I want. That's what I want. That's what I want.
Born on October 27, 1923, Roy Fox Lichtenstein was born in Manhattan, New York, to Milton and Beatrice Lichtenstein. Born into a middle-class Jewish family, his father Milton worked as a real estate broker, while his mother Beatrice was a homemaker. The Lichtensteins constantly moved around New York until settling in the Upper West Side. Having an uneventful childhood, he attended public school until 1936, when he was enrolled at Franklin School for Boys. Roy became interested in art because it was not a part of his school curriculum. In 1937, Roy enrolled in watercolor classes at Parsons School of Design in Manhattan. As a teenager, he began to paint and draw at home, taking classes in local community colleges. Throughout high school, he was an avid jazz fan, attending concerts at the Apollo Theater in Manhattan, gaining inspiration to draw portraits of the musicians playing their instrument. Roy graduated Franklin in 1940. He then enrolled in summer classes at the Art Student League of New York under the guidance of Reginald Marsh. He then went off to Ohio State to study art. But unfortunately, the war came and he was drafted into the army, fighting in England, France, Belgium, and Germany. In 1946, Roy returned home to visit his dying father and was then discharged from the army. He quickly returned to his studies in Ohio and got his bachelor's in 1946 and his master's in 1949. He began to have exhibitions at the 1030 Gallery in Cleveland, Ohio, and was then hired as an art instructor. He met gallery assistant Isabel Wilson, who was also a painter. On June 12, 1949, they got married. He also began to have exhibitions in New York and began painting in the Cubist Expressionist style. In 1951, Roy had his first solo exhibition at the Carla Back Gallery in New York. That same year, the Lichtensteins moved to Cleveland, remaining there for 6 years. The family frequently traveled back to New York to visit family. During his time in Cleveland, Roy worked as a draftsman and window decorator, trying to paint in between periods of time. Isabel's job as an interior decorator took off. On October 6, 1954, his first son, David Hoyt Lichtenstein, was born. His second son, Mitchell Wilson Lichtenstein, was born on March 10, 1956. It wasn't until 1957 that Roy returned back to New York. Roy began teaching in upstate New York at the State University of New York at Oswego. He remained there for 3 years until he resigned. During this time, he adopted the abstract expressionism style, beginning to incorporate hidden images of cartoon characters. In 1960, Roy resigned from Oswego and accepted another teaching position at Rutgers State University of New Jersey. Growing up, Roy never had any connections to any artists, making it difficult for him to navigate his way in the art scene. At Rutgers, he had the opportunity to meet Alan Capra, who introduced him to other breaking out artists. Roy gained an interest in photopop imagery and began his first pop paintings using cartoon images. He included the use of advertising imagery and used techniques derived from commercial printing, mostly from newspapers and magazine ads. He then moved on, using comic books to set the base for his next paintings. He began to experiment with acrylic paint, sticking to using Magna acrylic paint. Roy is mostly known for using Ben-Day dots in his art pieces. In 1961, Leo Castelli started displaying Lichtenstein's work at his gallery in New Jersey. In 1962, he had the opportunity to have his first one-man show. The entire collection was bought by influential collectors before the show even opened. In 1963, Roy was commissioned by Philip Johnson to create a mural for the New York State Pavilion. He called it Girl in Glass. It was at this time that Roy resigned from Rutgers and began to focus on his own art. He began a series of canvases depicting women from DC Comics. Roy began to have solo exhibitions all throughout the United States, gaining worldwide fame. Roy began experimenting with sculpture around 1964. In 1964, Roy met Dorothy Hershka at Paul Bianchini's gallery in New York. In 1965, he officially separated from Isabel. His most popular painting was Wham, which was created in 1963. It follows the comic strip-based themes of some of his previous paintings. It was purchased by the Tate Gallery in London in 1966 and has remained in their collection ever since. In 1968, Roy was commissioned by the Art and Technology program of the Los Angeles County Museum of Art to make a film. With the help of Universal Film Studios, the artist produced a series of marine landscapes. The film was released to the public in 1971. At the end of the year of 1968, Roy married Dorothy Hershka and moved to the Southamptons. In the 70s, Roy's style began to change drastically. He began working on a series of mirror paintings that had references to various artists in the 20th century. In 1977, he was commissioned by BMW to paint a Group 5 racing version of the BMW 320i. At this time, he began to receive major commissions for work in public places. One of his finest works is Brush Strokes in Flight. It stands 25 feet tall. In 1983, Roy began working on a 90-foot-long mural on the wall of Castelli's Green Street gallery space. It is a collage of some of his previous paintings, including his new mirrors and Picasso-esque figures. It was on display for about a month until it was torn down. This mural led Roy to another commission, to paint a mural on the Equitable Tower on New York's 7th Avenue. In 1985, Roy began to paint the Equitable mural. It took him about 6 weeks to complete it. It is widely regarded as his best example of a collage using borrowed images from his other paintings. Roy calls it Mural with Blue Brushstroke. It stands 68 feet long and 32 feet wide. In the 1990s, Roy created masterpieces that presented interiors of modern houses, mirror reflections, and brush strokes. In 1993, the Metropolitan Transportation Authority's Art for Transit program commissioned Roy Lichtenstein to create a mural for the Times Square subway station. He designed a 6-foot-tall, 53-foot-long porcelain mural displaying a futuristic vision of New York. On September 29, 1997, at the age of 73, Roy died due to complications of pneumonia. He passed away at the New York University Medical Center. Even after his death, his work continues to live on. He was the leader of the pop art movement, inspiring numerous artists to adopt his techniques and try to explore their own. Through parody, his work defined the basic premise of pop art. He was one of the first American pop artists to achieve widespread fame. He wanted people to criticize his work based on the quality that was being presented, not the content. His art continues to influence the 21st century.